Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this joint press briefing by Mr. Jean-Noel Barrot, Minister for Europe and Foreign Affairs of France, and His Highness Faisal bin Farhan, the Foreign Minister of Saudi Arabia. The Minister will deliver opening remarks and then we will take a few questions. Monsieur le Ministre, vous avez la parole.
Minister, you have the floor. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to first of all thank my colleague, His Highness Faisal bin Farhan. We have been working together for months now to organize this conference, and I thank him for the high-quality work that's been done together for peace and security for everyone in the Middle East. When the new regional escalation took place in June, we realized that many heads of state could not travel, and many thought and hoped perhaps that the international attention will be thus turned elsewhere and that this event will not take place. Well, this was a vain hope. What happened was exactly the opposite. Our determination is still there. We continued with our work together with our Saudi partners, but also with other mobilized partners to have this conference, starting with the 17 co-chairs of the thematic working groups. And I would like here to express our gratitude for the wonderful work that they have accomplished and their level of mobilization. Ultimately, we brought together 125 countries, 50 represented in New York at the ministerial level. We wanted to hold the conference as soon as possible because the clock is not on our side. The situation in Gaza is horrendous. And the civilian population in Israel and the Palestinian are paying the horrible price for the terrorist attacks on the 7th of October and for the war that is being waged by Israel in Gaza. The plight of the hostages still detained by Hamas, the pictures we see every day of civilians who are starving, who are being bombarded, of children and women held detained, is an assault on our humanity and international principles to which we are committed. We therefore wanted to bring together the international community and therefore provide a political horizon which is needed so as to have a ceasefire which is now being discussed under the aegis of the United Nations, Egypt and Qatar. Our main goal was to deliver a very clear message and say that peace is possible. We wanted to buy an alternative to the permanent state of war in the region, and this alternative has to include and go through a two-state solution, Israel and Palestine, living in peace and security. And this is a historic position that has been upheld by France, and this is the only way forward possible. The trend that we have created resulted in historic commitment already, starting with the president of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas. On the 9th June, he wrote a letter and thus mobilized himself for peace by condemning for the first time the terror attacks of the 7th of October, calling for the release of hostages, the disarming of Hamas, and for Hamas's exclusion from the governance in Gaza. He committed himself to fight against hate rhetoric and radicalization, to renew the Palestinian Authority and hold presidential legislative election in 2026. Of course, the Palestinian Authority will be held to these commitments. And we had a meeting between the civil society of the Palestinian and Israeli authorities on the 13th of June, part of the work that we've been doing with Saudi Arabia. And together they launched an appeal of Paris. The Paris appeal to normalize relations between Arab and Muslim countries in Israel and their common integration in the region of peace and security and the recognition of the state of Palestine. It is in the light of these commitments already undertaken that the President of the Republic sent a letter on the 24th of June to the President of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, and there he committed himself to recognize the state of Palestine at the next General Assembly in September. And through this decision, France reaffirms the right of the Palestinian people to self-determination in the face of the facts on the ground and the humanitarian disaster of people on the ground and the danger of being effaced. We recognize that Israel and Palestine, the actors of peace, have always rejected violence and terrorists. And this proves Hamas wrong. Hamas, who always fought against the two-state solution and doesn't recognize the right of Israel to exist. After that major decision made by France, historic commitments have been crystallized, are being formed today and tomorrow here in New York. And let me quote just three. First, on the part of the countries represented of the conference, which will adopt a common vision of Gaza after the war based on the international notion of stabilization. And then secondly, on the part of Saudi Arabia and the Arab and Muslim countries who, for the first time, will condemn terrorism, the acts of terror on the 7th of October, called for the disarmament of Hamas, and expressed their hope to have a normalized relationship with Israel in due time and regional integration on the basis of ACE or OSCE. And then thirdly, on the part of the Western countries who expressed their willingness to recognize the state of Palestine and therefore contribute to the edifice of peace. So this is a milestone. A milestone on the long road which leads us to the GA in September, when, through the voice of the President of the Republic, our decision to recognize the state of Palestine will be formalized, and where we are counting on collective mobilization, which should continue before it's too late.
Minister, please.
In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate. The resumption of the high-level international conference for the peaceful settlement of the question of Palestine and the implementation of the two-state solution reflects a wide international consensus that the way to end the violence and suffering is the actual implementation of the two-state solution based on the Arab Peace Initiative, UN resolutions, and the principle of land for peace. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, in cooperation with the Republic of France and all our partners, are committed to turn this international consensus to a tangible reality. It is time to end this conflict and to establish a Palestinian state and to achieve lasting and comprehensive peace that preserves security and sovereignty for all peoples of the region. In this context, we commend the announcement by President Macron, the commitment to recognize the state of Palestine. This is a historic step that reflects the acknowledgement of the international community of the legitimate rights of the Palestinian people. The peace between Israel and Palestine is the first step to establish regional peace where everybody lives in security. This would open horizons for cooperation and joint prosperity. Our meeting is held at a critical juncture. The tragedy of starvation is unfolding before us. The attempts for forced displacement persist, and other unilateral measures persist. They jeopardize the two-state solution, most notably expanding the settlements, forced displacement, and attempts for annexation. The war in Gaza must end immediately. In this context, we renew our full support to Qatari, Egyptian, and US efforts to reactivate the ceasefire, which would include releasing all hostages and the withdrawal of Israeli troops and ensuring the delivery of humanitarian aid without any obstacles. We categorically reject any attempts to separate Gaza from the rest of the Palestinian territories, or occupying Gaza, or imposing a siege on Gaza, or forcibly displace the Gazan under any justification and any argument. We highly value the statement by President Mahmoud Abbas on the 9th of June, which included choosing peace as a strategic choice and ensuring that the Palestinian people are granted their legitimate rights through peaceful means, and undertake all necessary reforms in that regard. We also express our commitment to support the efforts of Palestinian Authority to ensure reforms and good governance, and to work with the international community to support the reconstruction of Gaza. According to the Arab Muslim plan that received wide international support.
Thank you, Minister. We'll now move to the Q&A session, and we will start with Eddie Lederer from Associated Press on behalf of the UN Correspondent Association.
Your Highness Prince Farhan, Your Excellency Minister Barrot, on behalf of the United Nations Correspondents Association, thank you very much for doing this briefing. My name is Edith Lederer from the Associated Press. A couple of questions. Should the international community put sanctions or use any other pressure tactics against Israel to accept the concept of a two-state solution? And Your Highness, is Saudi Arabia's normalization of relations with Israel still on the table? And for both of you, do you see any change in the stance of President Donald Trump in trying to end the Gaza war and achieve a two-state solution? Thank you very much.
Si nous avons...
Well, if we had wanted, together with His Excellency Prince Faisal, to organize a conference co-chaired by France and Saudi Arabia on the issue of two states, well, it was because we thought that that solution is more under threat today, now than ever before, since the Oslo Accords about 30 years ago. In the wake of the barbaric and terrorist attack on the 7th of October, the indefinite extension then of the war led by the Israeli government in Gaza and the increased pace of settlements, all of these factors are opposing the solution, the two-state solution. And the goal of this conference and the commitments undertaken by countries, by the European country who are announcing their intent to recognize the Palestinian state, or the commitments undertaken by the state of Palestine or the Arab states to make an additional step towards Israel. This is to revive the peace camp, which in the past managed to have us come up with the idea according to which the hope of the Palestinians, the legitimate hope of Palestinians to have their own state, is not incompatible with the state of Israel, but it's an underpinning condition. And this is a demonstration that we wanted to show today, together with this Saudi Arabia, to reverse the trend of what is happening in the region, namely the erasure of the two-state solution, which has been for a long time as the only solution that can bring peace and security in the region. You mentioned the issue of sanctions. Well, I can't reply for the entire international community, but I do know that the European Commission, on behalf of the European Union, has to now very clearly express what our expectations are of the Israeli government, lifting the financial blockade, first of all, the 2 billion of euros that the Israeli government owes the Palestinian Authority, rejecting this settlement issue, the E1 in particular, 3,400 housing units in the West Bank, and this threatens the territorial integrity of the future state of Palestine. Stopping the activities of the GHF, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which is a militarized system, resulted in bloodbath About 1,000 people, according to UN figures, lost their lives as they were trying to go through the food distribution lines. Well, this has to end. The European Commission, on behalf of the EU, has to express its expectations and show the means that we can incentivize the Israeli government to hear this appeal that comes from the international community, but which the European Union would like to voice. If His Excellency Prince Faisal permits me, let me say a word on the role played by the United States and President Trump, who in January obtained a ceasefire we had been waiting for many months, and we welcome the efforts to arrive as quickly as possible together with Qatar and Egypt at a ceasefire and the release of all hostages held by Hamas, a disarming of Hamas, and unimpeded access to humanitarian assistance in Gaza. What we have done is we're preparing for the conference, and the commitments that are undertaken today will be taken tomorrow are tally with the implementation of this goal by the United States. It's an illusion to think that you can get to a lasting ceasefire without having an outline of what's going to happen in Gaza after the war and having a political horizon which includes Israeli security and the right of the Palestinian people to have a state. We have heard reservations that have been expressed in the United States as regards our initiative. We are of the opposite opinion. We think it's very compatible with the steps undertaken by President Trump during his first term in the Abrahams Accords, for example. And the collective logic that we have launched cannot be stopped. It's shown here at the conference. And this will allow us, in due time, to facilitate the work that is being done by the U.S. administration when it will once again to return to the logic of the Abraham Accords. Then it will be able to build it on the commitments built today and tomorrow in New York within our conference.
So, to your first question on normalization, I think we've been very, very clear over the last year and over the last many months, and most clear was the statement by the Crown Prince that for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, normalization with Israel can only come through the establishment of a Palestinian state. That position remains the same, and it is based on a strong conviction that only through the establishment of a Palestinian state and only through addressing the legitimate rights of the Palestinian people to self-determination can we have sustainable peace and real integration in the region. So we continue to have that position. We continue to call for moving in that direction. And I think our hope through this conference and other initiatives where it has become clear that international consensus is very much in line with that belief, that can be a catalyst for a real conversation about peace in the region and can actually accelerate the process towards regional integration. But again, that is contingent on achieving a Palestinian state. I would echo on the second question what my colleague, the Foreign Minister of France, has said. The US is an essential actor, and is certainly an essential actor in what concerns peace in the Middle East. And President Trump has, in fact, had success already in this regard. He was able to facilitate the first and only ceasefire so far in this conflict. And obviously, his personal engagement and his role is immensely important. And I think we've all heard President Trump statement in many occasions that he is a man of peace, that he is someone who abhors war, and he is a humanitarian. And I am firmly in the belief that U.S. engagement, and especially the engagement of President Trump, can be a catalyst for an end to the immediate crisis in Gaza and potentially a resolution of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict in the long term. So obviously, we as strong partners of the United States continue to work closely with the U.S. on many issues, and we hope that the U.S. will continue to lead in the efforts for peace. And as I said, we have tremendous respect and faith in President Trump's not just belief and hope in peace, but in his ability to deliver on that hopes.
Thank you. Claire Gatinois for Le Monde, please.
Pour cette conférence, une première.
Thank you. My first question for the minister, Mr. Barrot. So France had clarified its stance when it comes to the recognition of Palestine. Do you already have any signs from other states? Perhaps France won't be alone in this approach in September. Another question for the Saudi minister, similar to those of my colleagues. Could you imagine a relaunch of the Abraham Accords recognition for Palestine? Would that be a prerequisite for normalizing relations with Israel? And lastly, we've heard a great deal this morning about the conditions set forth regarding recognizing Palestine and demilitarizing Hamas. Do you support this requirement as well?
Je peux peut-être commencer pour...
I will begin by addressing your question. Right. So, the President of the Republic has made the decision to announce the recognition by France of the State of Palestine, which would take place formally in September on the silence of the General Assembly. And that is because we could not wait any longer. This solution, which, as I said before, is the only possible solution to ensure peace and security of Israelis and Palestinians and the entire region, as well as beyond, in the Mediterranean and in the world, to a certain extent. And therefore, this has to be relaunched. That is why it is so significant that France, the first country in G7 to do so, has taken this step in coordination with Saudi Arabia, which is a major power in the Middle East, so that through this initiative, new commitments can be made and new momentum can begin. A number of European countries, Western countries, have already in the past expressed their intentions to recognize the State of Palestine at some point in the process leading up to this two-state solution. Some of them have already hinted at the fact that they might follow France's example, and that in September we would have discussions over the course of 2 days. And the goal of those 2 days of discussions is to convince our colleagues who are still on the fence that the best time to contribute to this process would be the early stages. And so it is the time now for France and other countries to reject fatalism and to make a decision accompanied by commitments made by the Palestinian Authority and Arab countries for the security of Israel to prevent the worst from happening.
My French is too poor, so I will answer in English. So on the first question, I think I can just reiterate the answer I gave to your colleague earlier, that for the kingdom, recognition is very much tied to the establishment of the Palestinian state, and we certainly hope that the clear consensus shown today, and which will be shown tomorrow as well, and the clear momentum towards establishing that Palestinian state can open the conversation about normalization, but it can only open, first, if the conflict in Gaza ends, if the suffering of the people of Gaza is alleviated, because there's no reason even, or no credibility to have a conversation about normalization with with constant death and suffering and destruction in Gaza. And then we have to talk about the establishment of the Palestinian state. And once that is achieved, then obviously we can talk about normalization. Look, you asked about Hamas. The kingdom's position has always been that the Palestinian Authority is the only that Fatah and the Palestinian Authority are the only legitimate, the PLO are the only legitimate representative of the Palestinian people, and that continues to be the case. And I think what we have seen today with this conference as well reinforces another core belief of the kingdom, the belief that diplomacy, not violence, are the path to conflict resolution and to peace. So from our perspective, the focus needs to be on dialogue, the focus needs to be on diplomacy, and we need to focus on those tools, not the tools of violence. And obviously we need to have one unified representative of the Palestinian people, and that is the Palestinian Authority, who have shown themselves not only a credible governor of Palestine, but also a credible interlocutory for Israel in progressing towards peace. And I would hope that we will all work to reinforce the Palestinian Authority and its capacity and capability. Thank you.
Thank you. Since we are running out of time, we'll take one last and quick question for Ahmed Al-Mahmoud, from Sky News Arabia.
Thank you. My question is for His Royal Highness. In your statement, in your opening statement, you called for the adoption of the outcome document, which would be a roadmap towards the two-state solution. Could you kindly inform us of the general framework of this document? The other part of my question regards the timeline for the recognition of the Palestinian state. Do you have a clear concept of this time frame? Thank you very much. Of course, the outcome document includes a number of details. It's based on the work of 18 working groups. They made intense efforts, tireless efforts. So I cannot really summarize the outcome document in this conference as there is not enough time. As for the timeline for the recognition, for us, it should have happened years ago. But of course, anyone who can reach the truth at any time is something that we welcome. And I commend the courageous position of the President of France and the French Republic that indicated the intention to announce the recognition in September. There is ongoing dialogue with a number of European countries and Asian countries that have not yet recognized the State of Israel. 149 states do recognize. So the remaining countries are not that many. And dialogue is ongoing with these countries in order to reach that decision. We hear that the majority of other states are ready, or at least they're willing. But they are waiting for the right time, according to them. What we say to them is that the right time is now. We should not link the recognition of the State of Palestine to the Israeli veto. Those who believe that the two-state solution is the only viable solution for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, as most countries say, and those who recognize Israel, they should also now recognize Palestine. Non-recognition of Palestine in this critical phase would mean a rejection. No, I'm ready to look into another option, not the two-state solution. So those who are convinced that the only viable solution is the two-state solution, and those who have already recognized one of those countries, one of those states, they must now recognize the second state. Of course, there are certain issues that will be settled, that should be settled through negotiation between the State of Palestine and the State of Israel, and this is known to all. But this is not really a reason not to recognize the Palestinian state. This recognize enhances the capacity of the State of Palestine to negotiate with Israel. And also, this would undermine attempts in Israel by certain extremists and unfortunately by certain officials of the government at the moment, undermine the idea that there is an alternative solution. This is why we're engaged with our friends in France, and I commend not only the French role, but also I commend working on putting forward the arguments behind this recognition so other countries can follow suit.
Your Honest, thank you very much, Monsieur le Ministre. Merci beaucoup. We wish you a very good day. The press conference, is over.